Disclaimer, I was invited by the Panzermuseum Munster in 2019 and 2020, and yes, Austrian law requires me to state this since I use footage from those trips. Very important here, any errors in this video are my own. The Panzermuseum or its staff was not involved in the creation of this video. So in the beginning of April 2022 it was announced that Germany authorized the sale of former German Democratic Republic infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. First off, this was not an April's Fool's joke. Second, the wording is extremely important here. Authorize the sale and the designation of the vehicle. Third, this is another step by Germany in regard to changing its previous position in terms of foreign policy, since this vehicle constitutes a heavy weapon. Germany previously sent handheld anti-tank weapons and other equipment, but heavy equipment only indirectly and rarely, like the artillery that Estonia sent to Ukraine and was only approved by Germany after the outbreak of the war. Now, initially I wrongly assumed that this would mean that Germany would sell some old BMP-1s that were mothballed to Ukraine. Nope, we are talking about two Germanys here, as such it gets uber complicated. This becomes more apparent if we look at what Reuters wrote. Berlin has given the green light for 56 vehicles of the type Pbv 501 to be passed on from a Czech company to Kiev, as spokesman for the Defense Ministry said on Friday. So first off, what is the Pbv 501? Well, it is a converted BMP-1. Now, Panzerbandwagen 501, or in short Pbv 501, is the Swedish designation. But it is noted that a Czech company sold them. But then, why does the German government have to authorize the sale of a former Swedish vehicle that are sold by a Czech company? Well, let us first trace those BMP-1s and then look at the authorization question. So in 1974, East Germany ordered more than 1,000 BMP-1s from the Soviet Union. Between 1974 and 1982, these were delivered. According to Tank Encyclopedia, 1,133. Some of these BMP-1s were built in the Soviet Union and some in Czechoslovakia. The last part will be important later. After the German reunification in the 1990s, these BMP-1s became part of the Bundeswehr. According to an info plague in the Panzermuseum Munster, 764 BMP-1s should be converted to German standards, now called BMP-1 A1 Ost. Yet only around 580 were converted. Of those, 500 were sold to Greece. Finland also bought around 110 to 140, depending on the source. But this was already in 1990 and these were not converted beforehand. Be aware I used a photo of the info plague in the Panzermuseum Munster and it seems to be rather old, so there's no information on the Swedish deal. So far no real surprises, yet these are not the BMP-1s we are looking for. Since there were more, in 1994 Sweden bought 5 of these BMP-1 for evaluation and testing. The Swedes were happy with the results and ordered 433 in total, of which 350 were assembled and 83 that were disassembled for spare parts. The whole order took around 1996 to 2001 to be completed. Why did it take so long? Well, the Swedes were not happy with various features of the Pbv 501, as they called the converted BMP-1. There was also the Strip V 5011, which was a command variant. Various changes were performed, which will be mentioned later. It seems at least some of them had been stored outside and were in bad shape as well. The renovation and upgrades were done in the Czech Republic. The Pbv 501 was not suited for usage in the far northern units and reassigned. Reduction of the size of the armed forces followed. Already in 2005, the Pbv 501 were put in storage and decommissioned. In 2008, the Swedes put out a sales notice about the Swedish BMP-1 on the website of the Swedish Defense Material Administration, which stated the following according to the snapshot of the web archive and includes some very important information. The Swedish Armed Forces offers to sell about 350 units of modified armed vehicle BMP-1 Pbv 501, including spare parts and training equipment. 250 of the vehicles are in mint condition with meter reading less than 120 kilometers. A few of the vehicles are of the command version. Primarily we want to sell all vehicles and spare parts to one buyer, but sale in batches of 50 units or more could be considered. During a total renovation program in 1996, modifications were made in the following areas. Same technical configuration of all vehicles, engine, transmission, etc. Environmental improvements, asbestos cleanup, etc. Traffic safety, safety on board. The offer consists of BMP-1 vehicles, spare parts and training equipment. We would prefer government-to-government business. The sale is restricted and requires exportation permit from Swedish authorities. Kindly indicate your interest before 1st August 2008. This page also lists the Lieutenant Colonel's name that was the sales manager and his contact details in case you have access to a time machine. Anyway, so what happened next? Well, in 2010 a Czech company bought them. Some of these were sent to Iraq, but it seems some stayed. So since we now know which BMP-1s we are looking at least if the information from the Reuters article is correct. Yet since they mentioned both the Czech company and the designation of the vehicle, although with some minor deviation, I think this one should be correct. So why does the German government have to authorize the sale of the Czech vehicles that were formerly used by the Swedish Armed Forces? Well, this comes down to German armaments export laws, and of course they also have a special word for it as well. Endverbleibskontrolle, which literally means end whereabouts control, but more meaningfully means end use control, which is also used in official translation on the homepage. So let us look at a quote from the frequently asked questions from the homepage of the German Ministry of Finance and Climate Protection. Useful and effective controls of military equipment are only possible if it is ensured that military equipment provided remains with the consignee in the country of destination and is not passed on to other recipients and/or to other countries without permission from the Federal Republic of Germany, for instance by being sold by a consignee. The end-use control ensures that the war weapons and other military equipment stay where they should. Every decision on whether military equipment may be exported is preceded by a careful ex-ante review. All of the available information is fully scrutinized and assessed. The recipient makes a declaration confirming that exports from Germany will stay in his country. If the federal government has doubts about the final use of the military equipment in the country of destination, it rejects export applications for the country. In order to improve the controls of the end use of war weapons and other military equipment, the Federal Cabinet adopted principles for post-shipment controls in July 2015. These measures make it possible to undertake the on-the-spot controls at the recipient of the military equipment listed here. This makes it easier to detect and deter the passing on of such equipment to third parties. Big thank you to Chris from Military Aviation History for pointing out this one to me. Now some people will ask, why did Germany not send some Marder infantry fighting vehicles or other vehicles? First off, Germany did not send those converted BMP-1s, it just approved its sale to Ukraine. This is different on the diplomatic playing field if I'm not mistaken. Second, leaving out the political side, the Ukraine Armed Forces know the BMP-1 since they have this vehicle in their own units as well. This is of major importance since training takes time and in war that is usually short. Another important aspect is of course logistics and maintenance. Ukraine would also require spare parts and mechanics to keep Marders running, even if they would have the crews to operate them. Of course, these BMP-1s have been modified. Yet these modifications were likely limited to a few components, and if that is not the case, those likely can be retrofitted with Ukrainian parts as well. So in short, the reasons for why no Marder are due to politics, training, logistics and maintenance. On the screen you can see now the simple timeline and operators of the BMP-1s that will be sent to Ukraine. Now to the summary. The German government approved the sale of Czech BMP-1s that formerly were operated by the Swedish Armed Forces. The approval was required since the German government sold these vehicles that formerly were part of East German Armed Forces to Sweden, and German law has a clause on armaments export that it has to approve every further sale. Although these BMP-1s were converted several times, core components and basic handling are likely very similar or completely compatible to regular BMP-1s. Even if this is not the case, changes should be minor enough that Ukrainian forces can use and maintain them with minor overhead in time. Be aware, all errors are my own, no one else was involved in writing of this script. Thank you to the Panzermuseum Munster for inviting me in 2019 and 2020. Special thanks to Chris from Military Aviation History for helping out with some sources. If you like what you see, consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar. Big thank you to all of you who already do or did support me there. As always, sources are listed in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.